Where are we?
Paris, and this is the mighty Musée d'Orsay, home to many of the greatest paintings in history.
Oh, that's wonderful.
On May 15, 1990, a painting sold at auction for $82.5 million. It was a portrait of a doctor, painted in swirling blues and greens, with thick brush strokes that seemed to dance across the canvas. The artist had painted it in 1890, just weeks before his death. He had given it to the doctor as payment for medical treatment. The artist never sold a single painting during his lifetime. He died believing he was a complete failure. His name was Vincent van Gogh. Today, his paintings sell for hundreds of millions of dollars. Museums around the world display his work. Art students study his techniques. His name is synonymous with artistic genius. But Vincent never knew any of this. He spent his entire life convinced that he was worthless, that his art was meaningless, that he would be forgotten the moment he died. This is the story of the man who created some of the most beautiful art in human history while living in the deepest darkness of human despair. What would you sacrifice to create something eternal if you knew you'd never live to see its value? Vincent Willem van Gogh was born on March 30, 1853, in the small Dutch village of Groot Zundert. His father, Theodorus, was a Protestant minister. His mother, Anna, came from a family of art dealers and bookbinders. Vincent was born exactly 1 year after his parents' first child, also named Vincent, had died in infancy. He grew up literally in the shadow of his dead brother, walking past the grave that bore his own name every time he went to church. From his earliest years, Vincent was different. He was moody, intense, and prone to violent outbursts. He had few friends and seemed uncomfortable in his own skin. His family didn't know what to do with him. At 16, Vincent was sent to work at his uncle's art gallery in The Hague. The Van Gogh family had been art dealers for generations. It seemed like a natural fit. It wasn't. Vincent was passionate about art, but he had no patience for customers or commerce. He would lecture visitors about the spiritual meaning of paintings instead of trying to sell them. He criticized wealthy collectors for buying art as status symbols, rather than appreciating its deeper significance. After 4 years, he was fired. Vincent tried several other careers: teacher, bookstore clerk, theology student. He failed at all of them. He was too intense, too passionate, too unwilling to compromise his principles for practical success. In 1879, at age 26, Vincent found his calling. He became a missionary in the coal mines of Belgium. Finally, he thought, he could serve God and help the poor. Vincent threw himself into missionary work with characteristic intensity. He gave away his clothes to miners' families. He slept on the floor of a shack. He preached with such fervor that he made church officials uncomfortable. After 18 months, he was dismissed from his position. Even as a missionary, Vincent was too extreme. He was 27 years old and had failed at everything he'd tried. He was unemployed, unmarried, and living off his younger brother Theo's charity. His family considered him the black sheep, the disappointment, the one who would never amount to anything. Vincent was devastated. He wandered the Belgian countryside for months, sketching peasants and landscapes, trying to figure out what to do with his life. Then, in 1880, he made a decision that would change art history. He decided to become a painter. Vincent had no formal training. He had never taken an art class. He couldn't afford proper supplies. But he had something more valuable than training or money. He had an unquenchable need to create. He taught himself to draw by copying prints and studying anatomy books. He practiced obsessively, filling sketchbook after sketchbook with studies of hands, faces, and figures. His early work was dark and heavy, influenced by the Dutch masters he admired. He painted peasants, weavers, and potato eaters. The working poor he had tried to serve as a missionary. Vincent's family was skeptical. Another career change? Another obsession that would lead nowhere? Only his brother Theo believed in him. Theo, 4 years younger than Vincent, worked as an art dealer in Paris. He began sending Vincent a monthly allowance of 150 francs, enough to survive, barely. This arrangement would continue for the rest of Vincent's life. Theo supported Vincent financially and emotionally, believing in his brother's talent even when Vincent didn't believe in himself. In 1886, Vincent moved to Paris to live with Theo. The city transformed his art and his life. Paris in the 1880s was the center of the art world. Impressionist painters like Monet and Renoir were revolutionizing how art was made. Post-impressionists like Cézanne and Gauguin were pushing even further into uncharted territory. Vincent absorbed everything. He studied Japanese prints, experimented with pointillism, and began using brighter colors. His palette shifted from the dark browns and grays of his early work to the brilliant yellows, blues, and greens that would make him famous. He also met other artists: Toulouse-Lautrec, Émile Bernard, Paul Gauguin. For the first time in his life, Vincent had friends who understood his passion for art. But Paris also overwhelmed him. The city was too fast, too crowded, too stimulating for his fragile mental state. After 2 years, he needed to escape. In February 1888, Vincent moved to Arles, a small town in the south of France. He was seeking the bright light and warm colors of the Mediterranean. He found them, and much more. The 15 months Vincent spent in Arles were the most productive of his life. He painted at a furious pace: landscapes, portraits, still lifes, street scenes. He completed over 300 paintings and drawings. This was when Vincent created some of his most famous works: The Starry Night over the Rhône, The Bedroom, Sunflowers, The Yellow House. His style reached full maturity in Arles. The thick, expressive brushstrokes, the swirling, dynamic compositions, the emotional intensity that seemed to radiate from every canvas. Vincent was painting like a man possessed. Some days he would complete an entire painting from start to finish. He worked in blazing heat, in driving rain, by candlelight when darkness fell. He was also descending into madness. The isolation, the intense work schedule, and his underlying mental illness were taking their toll. Vincent began having episodes of confusion, paranoia, and rage. In December 1888, after a confrontation with Paul Gauguin, who had come to visit, Vincent suffered a complete breakdown. In a fit of madness, he cut off part of his left ear with a razor blade. He wrapped the severed ear in paper and gave it to a woman at a local brothel. Vincent was hospitalized for 2 weeks. When he recovered, he painted some of his most haunting self-portraits, showing himself with a bandaged ear and a haunted expression. The people of Arles were terrified of him. They petitioned the mayor to have him removed from the town. Vincent, the man who had come seeking peace and inspiration, was now seen as a dangerous madman. In May 1889, Vincent voluntarily committed himself to the Saint-Rémy de Provence asylum. He would spend the next year in and out of mental institutions. But even in the asylum, Vincent continued to paint. During his year at Saint-Rémy, he created some of his greatest masterpieces: The Starry Night, Irises, Wheatfield with Cypresses. The Starry Night, painted from his asylum window, would become one of the most recognizable images in art history. The swirling sky, the blazing stars, the sleeping village below. It was Vincent's vision of the cosmos, painted during his darkest hour. Vincent was aware that his mental illness was destroying his life, but he couldn't stop painting. Art was the only thing that gave his suffering meaning. "I put my heart and soul into my work," he wrote to Theo, "and have lost my mind in the process." In May 1890, Vincent left the asylum and moved to Auvers-sur-Oise, a small town near Paris. Dr. Paul Gachet, a physician and art lover, agreed to look after him. Vincent seemed to be recovering, He painted prolifically. Portraits of Dr. Gachet, landscapes of the Auvers countryside, scenes of village life. But beneath the surface, Vincent was struggling. He was 37 years old and had sold exactly one painting in his entire career. He was completely dependent on Theo's charity. He felt like a burden, a failure, a man who had wasted his life chasing an impossible dream. On July 27, 1890, Vincent walked into a wheat field outside Auvers. He shot himself in the chest with a revolver. He didn't die immediately. He walked back to his room at the inn and lay down on his bed. When Dr. Gachet found him, Vincent was smoking his pipe and seemed calm. "I wanted to kill myself," he told the doctor. Theo rushed from Paris to be with his brother. Vincent died in Theo's arms on July 29, 1890. His last words were, "The sadness will last forever." He was 37 years old. Vincent van Gogh died believing he was a complete failure. He had sold one painting. He had no money, no family of his own, no recognition. He thought his art was worthless and that he would be quickly forgotten. He couldn't have been more wrong. Within months of Vincent's death, his work began to attract attention. Theo, devastated by his brother's suicide, died just 6 months later. But Theo's widow, Johanna, became Vincent's champion. She organized exhibitions of Vincent's work. She published his letters. She made sure the world knew about the tortured genius who had died in obscurity. By 1900, Vincent van Gogh was recognized as one of the most important artists of his generation. By 1950, he was considered one of the greatest painters in history. Today, Vincent's paintings are among the most valuable objects on Earth. The card players sold for over $250 million in 2011. Portrait of Dr. Gachet, the painting he gave to his doctor as payment, sold for $82.5 million in 1990. The Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam attracts over 2 million visitors annually. His paintings hang in the world's greatest museums. Art students study his techniques. His influence can be seen in countless artists who came after him. But the real measure of Vincent's success isn't financial, it's emotional. Vincent's paintings speak to something universal in the human experience. His swirling skies capture the turbulence of mental illness. His sunflowers radiate joy despite darkness. His self-portraits reveal a soul in torment, but still capable of creating beauty. People connect with Vincent's art because they connect with his struggle. He painted what it felt like to be human. The beauty and the pain, the hope and the despair, the constant search for meaning in a chaotic world. Vincent wrote over 800 letters during his lifetime, mostly to Theo. These letters reveal a man of extraordinary sensitivity, intelligence, and compassion. He wasn't just a great painter. He was a great human being who happened to be destroyed by mental illness. "I dream of a future generation that will be free from the terrible burden of mental illness," Vincent wrote. "Until then, we must create beauty to make the suffering bearable." Vincent van Gogh created beauty that has made suffering bearable for millions of people. His paintings hang in hospitals, schools, and homes around the world, bringing comfort to those who need it most. The man who died believing he was worthless created art that is literally priceless. The man who thought he would be forgotten became immortal. The man who lived in darkness created light that still shines today. Vincent's tragedy wasn't that he failed. His tragedy was that he never knew he had succeeded. But perhaps that's what made his art so powerful. Vincent painted not for fame or money, but because he had to. He painted to survive, to make sense of his pain, to transform his suffering into something beautiful. "I want to touch people with my art," Vincent wrote. "I want them to say, 'He feels deeply, he feels tenderly.'" Mission accomplished, Vincent. Mission accomplished. Today, when someone looks at the starry night and feels less alone in their darkness, Vincent succeeds again. When someone sees his sunflowers and remembers that beauty exists even in difficult times, Vincent succeeds again. When someone struggling with mental illness sees his self-portraits and realizes they're not alone, Vincent succeeds again. He created the world's most expensive art, but his real masterpiece was showing us that it's possible to create beauty even in the depths of despair. Vincent van Gogh, the failed missionary who became art's greatest evangelist, spreading a gospel of beauty, compassion, and hope to a world that desperately needed all three. He died believing he was a failure. He was actually one of history's greatest successes. The sadness didn't last forever, Vincent. The beauty did. Vincent's influence extends far beyond the art world. His story has inspired countless books, films, and documentaries. Musicians have written songs about him. Poets have dedicated verses to his memory. His life has become a symbol of the tortured artist, the misunderstood genius, the person who sacrifices everything for their art. But this romanticization sometimes obscures the real Vincent, a man who struggled with severe mental illness in an era when such conditions were poorly understood and rarely treated with compassion. Modern psychiatrists believe Vincent suffered from bipolar disorder, possibly complicated by temporal lobe epilepsy. His episodes of mania and depression, his hallucinations, his self-destructive behavior, all are consistent with these conditions. In Vincent's time, mental illness was seen as a moral failing, a sign of weakness or sin. There were no effective treatments, no support systems, no understanding of the biological basis of psychiatric disorders. Vincent painted through his illness, not because of it. His art was his attempt to maintain sanity in an insane world, to find beauty in chaos, to create meaning from suffering. "I am not an adventurer by choice, but by fate," Vincent wrote. "I feel nowhere so much myself a stranger as in my family and country." This sense of alienation drove Vincent to seek connection through his art. Every brushstroke was an attempt to communicate, to reach across the void of human loneliness and touch another soul. The irony is profound. The man who felt most isolated created art that connects with millions of people across cultures and centuries. Vincent's letters to Theo reveal not just an artist's development, but a profound meditation on the human condition. He wrote about love, loss, faith, doubt, beauty, and suffering with the insight of a philosopher and the passion of a poet. "I feel that there is nothing more truly artistic than to love people," Vincent wrote. This love permeates his work, from his tender portraits of peasants to his compassionate depictions of the mentally ill. Vincent saw dignity in everyone he painted. The potato eaters, the postmen, the asylum patients, all were rendered with the same care and respect he gave to his self-portraits. This democratic vision of art was revolutionary. In Vincent's time, serious art depicted gods, kings, and mythological scenes. Vincent painted ordinary people living ordinary lives and made them extraordinary through his vision. His technique was equally revolutionary. The thick application of paint, the visible brushstrokes, the emotional use of color, all broke with academic tradition and pointed toward modern art. Artists like Picasso, Matisse, and Kandinsky acknowledged Vincent's influence on their work. The Expressionist movement, abstract expressionism, and countless other artistic developments can trace their roots back to Vincent's innovations. But Vincent's greatest legacy isn't technical or stylistic, it's spiritual. He showed that art could be a form of prayer, a way of wrestling with the deepest questions of existence. His paintings are visual sermons about beauty, suffering, redemption, and hope. "I want to show that there is something comforting and healing in nature," Vincent wrote. His landscapes pulse with life force. His flowers seem to glow with inner light. His skies swirl with cosmic energy. Even his darkest paintings contain seeds of hope. The Potato Eaters, painted during his most difficult period, shows a poor family sharing a simple meal. Their faces are weathered by hardship, but they're together, they're surviving, they're finding sustenance in community. Vincent understood that art's highest purpose isn't decoration or entertainment, but transformation. He painted to change how people see the world, to help them find beauty in unexpected places, to offer comfort to the suffering. Art is to console those who are broken by life, Vincent wrote. His own brokenness became the source of his greatest strength. The man who created the world's most expensive art never cared about money. He cared about connection, about meaning, about leaving the world a little more beautiful than he found it. In this, he succeeded beyond his wildest dreams. Today, Vincent van Gogh is not just an artist, but a cultural icon, a symbol of creative passion and human resilience. His story reminds us that greatness often comes at a terrible cost, but that the cost is worth paying if it creates something eternal. Vincent died believing he was a failure, but he was actually one of history's greatest successes. He transformed his pain into beauty, his isolation into connection, his despair into hope. The world's most expensive art was created by a man who never had any money. But Vincent van Gogh was rich in the only currency that truly matters: the ability to see beauty in a broken world and share that vision with others.